Hi, everybody. This is John Bell, and this is the Harbinger Report. And tonight we've got a popular host back on, Shawn Starry. Might as well be a co-host of the channel. A lot of people have been asking when he's going to come back and when they're going to see him again, so I'm glad that we were able to get him back. Shawn's going to be speaking about some of the investigation he's been doing into wildfires that have been going on in Texas, and I'm sure a lot of people have heard about in the news. And we're going to get into some discussions about the high plains craziness that's been going on with all that stuff. So without further ado, everybody, Shawn, why don't you introduce yourself? And for those that haven't seen you before, give a brief introduction of yourself, and then jump into the story.
Yeah, my name is Shawn Starry. I am currently a podcaster as well as a citizen journalist. I've got a new documentary coming out. It's called Panhandle. That talks about the Panhandle fire, how it started, and why. And our projection date right now is for June 20th. We're going to have this available on the paladinsroundtable.com. That's a network that we're using this platform on. So.
Yeah. Okay. So can you see the picture I posted of the movie?
Yeah. So this is the movie. And this is a piece of artwork that I had commissioned somebody to help me with. So
It looks nice. I like it. Okay. So what made you decide to go to Texas? You just heard about it in the news? Did you suspect foul play? What made you decide to go down there? Shawn actually left and went down there in person to go to the site. So
yeah, so a good friend of mine, his name is Ryan Zink. He's a J6 prisoner. He lives down in Lubbock, Texas, and he called me up and he said, "Hey, we've got this fire that's happening down here." And at the time, I think he said it was close to 1,000,000 acres that was burned up. So the big thing for me is that my original goal was to go down there and to help with trying to raise money and get resources to the ranchers and stuff. But as a citizen journalist, I was more concerned about was why this was happening and what can we do to prevent this from happening in the future. And so I reached out to my business partners, and we decided this is a venture that we wanted to pay for. So the business pretty much paid for the entire trip for me to go down there. And within a few hours, I had the plane ticket ready to go. I had my bags packed and just kind of grabbed my camera, my 4K camera, and the equipment, and just kind of got onto the plane. I did a carry on, and I got down to Midland, Texas. Well, first I went from Chicago here all the way to Denver. Then I had to run all the way to the other side of the airport to the very end and got on a smaller plane and flew from there to Midland, Texas. And then that's where a good friend of mine, Joshua James, picked me up. And then we went down to Ryan's place down in Lubbock. And then we kind of just started to kind of strategize how we were going to do this and how to approach this. And he had a big trailer, 40-foot enclosed trailer. And I went down to a small town. It's called Smyre, Texas. And we had the high school group of kids that were there. They're helping us loading the trailer up. And then we took it to Fritz, Texas and dropped it off there. So that was kind of my first day, boots on the ground kind of situation.
right. Yeah, that sounds wild. So what did you experience once you got there?
Well, let's see. One of my partners, or I should say not a partner, but my colleague who came down from Ohio, she flew down to be with me and to go on this. And we were followed by the FBI from the Washington Field House. And every time we got a lead, we would go to that location. We started shooting footage along the way. We got footage while we were there. We ran into some opposition with some of the ranchers down there because there was a situation that came up when we got into Fritch. We got to a bait shop where they were doing all the drop-offs. And one of the rancher's wife came, and she said her neighbors had gotten approached by 4 female officers. And they were trying to convince the couple that they needed to leave their farm because the house was burned down to the ground. But now, keep in mind, the Morton building was still intact, but everything else was gone, right? And the wife over there, that rancher's wife, she had 3rd-degree burns on her right arm and her right leg.
Mm.
So there was other ranchers' wives got together and they getting the medical equipment, got out there. Some of them were nurses. I think one was a doctor. They were treating her for 3rd-degree burns. She didn't want to leave because they were afraid that the government was going to come in and take their land. And so the rancher, he had his big shop.
There's a rule of thumb: don't leave your property.
Right. And so
the laws change somehow when you do.
Right. Yeah, they call that abandonment. So the rancher comes out with the shotgun and he's trying to have a cordial conversation with these people and telling them that they need to leave. And they kept trying to tell you need to get off the land. And so one of them got stupid and they pulled out their guns. So he pulled up his shotgun and shot all 4 of them dead. His wife called the sheriff's department, and the sheriff came out and saw everything. And, he said, okay, well, we're going to rule it as a justifiable shooting. And so he called the local county coroner to come out and to just, get rid of the bodies. He wrote up the report and everything. The word got out very quickly. And so everybody in the ranching community there were very hesitant. There was a couple of people that were talking to mainstream media reporters, obviously, but that's in Hutchinson County. But give me an idea, Hutchinson County is about 2,000 people. But that's one of the wealthiest counties in the Panhandle. And they were essentially stopping people along the highway that were trying to go to the smaller ranchers that were bringing hay, bringing supplies, and redirecting them into the town called Canadian. So that way they can get the resources, and then they would write down everything that they got for resources and give it to FEMA, and FEMA would pay them dollar for dollar for all the resources. And that county would have then absolute control over that money. Whereas a lot of the other smaller ranching communities in the other counties were not getting those goods. So, we had some pretty amazing people down there. They got together and said, hey, I'm going to open up my bait shop and we're going to get these stuff to the smaller ranchers and whatnot. And
those are the people that should have been shot.
Yeah. And so everybody was really apprehensive the first 2 or 3 days. But when they saw that I was actually down there raising money and I was helping Joshua James and Ryan Zink buy the stuff, we were going to Home Depot, Lowe's, different places. And we were buying up to like a 40-foot trailer worth of stuff. We would bring it, we'd drop it off, and we just take the time to talk to them. But then I had an opportunity where one of my friends and Joshua James' friend, he owns a gun and ammo store in Oklahoma, and so he had 1,500 rounds of ammunition flowing in. And so all I had to do was go to the airport, pick it up, take it to the ranchers themselves. And as soon as I started handing off a lot of these ammos to them, they started opening up and then they started trusting me. And when they heard why I was there, and I said, listen, I'm a son of a farmer. I grew up on a farm. We nearly lost everything we had in a fire. So I get it. I understand what you guys are going through. And I'm just down here trying to not only help you guys, but I'm filming this documentary because I want to tell your story as we go along. And I know there's the progression throughout this whole thing. And so it was just a matter of establishing myself as a free citizen journalist. I'm not affiliated with any mainstream media network. I don't play those kind of games. I don't read a script. I will tell you exactly as we saw, what we saw, and what people were dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And the fact that, we were getting followed by the FBI everywhere we went. We stopped in a little town called Wheeler, Texas. Just kind of
I
funny.
just passed through all those towns, by the way.
Yeah. And I woke up the next morning about 5:30, a little bit earlier than Christy did, and I just figured I'd just go get some coffee and some donuts or something for breakfast and bring it back to the hotel room before we get our day started. And I get to this little diner, like gas station kind of slash diner place, and the FBI guy, he pulls up next to me, and so I go in and I get the coffee and the donuts, and then I turn around and I come out to the car. I see him sitting in his car with the window rolls down, and the guy flips me off. Right?
The agent flipped you off?
Yeah, the agent flipped me off.
Why?
And,
Why would he do that?
well, I think what he was trying to do was to try to elicit a response from me.
He was trying to provoke you.
Yeah. So then he could turn around and probably get me nannered. And so I told him, I said, well, you can keep following me all around if you want. I said, you're more than welcome to waste taxpayers' dollars. And he kind of I don't think he was expecting that. And the demeanor, look on his face was like, what? And I said, yeah, you can follow me around. I said, I'll even give you permission. I said, everything we're doing is not illegal. So good luck, And so I got in my car and I drove back to the hotel and I gave Christy her coffee and we had donuts and the hotel we were staying in, it kind of looks a lot like the Norman Bates Motel.
Oh no.
Yeah. And it's a little bit more colorful. It was like two main colors, like an orange and a yellow. But
right.
Yeah, there was a stray cat that come popping out of one of the hotel windows and came over, and we were giving it pieces of donut and stuff. But
That's great. What those people that were killed on that ranch by the farmer, were those agents or law enforcement that were trying to evacuate him? I mean, who was trying to evacuate him at that time when it turned deadly?
it was 4 female officers.
It was 4 female officers. Were they must have been federal agents then, huh?
Yeah, they were federal agents. They were not local law enforcement. They were,
even though the sheriff ruled it what do you call it, a justified situation, the feds are probably still going to come back and press charges against him.
I don't know if they will or not. I just know that it was a pretty hairy situation. They were physically trying to remove them. And
you heard this week about the ATF attacked a home to serve one of these red flag BS deals, and they ended up murdering the guy in his house, where the guy in his house just hears someone breaking in and commotion with guns flying, doesn't know what's going on. He grabs his gun and then they kill him. That was straight out murder.
Yeah, that was the airport director.
Yeah, no criminal record, no threat. They could have just as easily knocked at the door and said, come talk to us, as then kicking the door down. If anyone has their door kicked down with armed people coming in, the natural course is to grab a gun and defend yourself, defend your house, your wife. His wife was right next to him. So, yeah, I mean, this is ridiculous. People come onto your land and they start acting aggressive and vanishing weapons. And it's another thing that's really sad here. You're in the middle of this crisis with all this fire going on and trying to help these people. And what's the biggest thing that they need to get in from the airport? Ammunition, bullets. I mean, that's insane. That's just a level of insanity. But it's also reality. Now, step back and take a larger look at what's going on. Just like I mentioned with these red flag laws, the government's trying to do everything, and the ATF looks like they're full out communist right now. They just want to ban guns, just period. They don't give a crap about citizens or their protection, and they certainly don't care about the Second Amendment or your constitutional rights. They only care about their abuse of power, and that's all it is. They're communist abuse of power, communist globalist abuse of power. So they're trying to take all these guns from citizens when that's the most important thing you could ever have to defend you, your family, your land, or whatever, from forest fire, nuclear bombs, anything. It's guns, it's ammo. That's what you need. That's what they're trying to take away. And then you got a federal judge that says, oh, it's okay for illegals to carry guns. Yeah. On what planet does that make sense? Unless you hate America and Americans and you want to see our country destroyed.
Exactly.
I mean,
That's what it is that they're blatantly going against the Constitution in every regard, and they've made the process so difficult for you to go back and challenge them. Well, by the time you get to that point, it's going to be way too late. It's going to be all done. It's not going to be America no more. This is going to be the freaking Third Reich all over again.
that's
So,
it. If you don't defend your liberties and your Constitution, you will very fastly find a time. I don't know if fastly is a word, probably not. You will very soon come to find a time where you don't have those freedoms or liberties anymore.
yeah,
If
and
you don't stand up to defend them.
that's one thing about Texans is they don't play around.
Yep.
These guys are always carrying. Doesn't matter man or woman.
Louisiana, where I live, just like that. You
Mhm.
come start some crap here. Our rule is you shoot and kill first, and they can ask questions later. And if it was on your property, then guess what? You're innocent. That's how we play in Louisiana. If it's on your property, you're innocent. If someone tries to break in my door, if I've told them to get off my property and they won't leave, you can shoot all you want. You're going to be in the clear. That's how our judges are. That's how our sheriff is. That's how we run things here. And you know what? That's why we don't have trouble here. Oh, on the
Right.
side, on the right side of the street of me is state police. On the left side, sheriff's department. At the end of the road, there's sheriff's department. The other end of the road, sheriff's department. Yeah, we don't play any of those games here. But Texas doesn't play that either. As you see, I
No,
mean, this
no,
ranger shot four federal agents.
well, it's just like when I went down to the FedEx. Well, no, it was the local post office. And when I walked into the local post office, I was mailing out boxes of physical samples that I had taken from the burn sites. And everybody that was in there was open carry. They had an open carry weapon on them, every single person.
Love
And
it.
even the postmaster himself had an open carry weapon. So I'm like, okay, this is Texas, right? And
Right.
where I live in Illinois, I mean, that's good
I
luck.
wouldn't fly.
If somebody saw that I was carrying something, they would call the police, and I'd be in the world of hurt. But
Right.
not down in Texas. People actually do take care of each other, and
Yep.
the utmost respect. They don't want to ask for help. They told FEMA to get the F out. We'll take care of our neighbors. That's how we
FEMA
do it.
doesn't care about them at all. They just want to steal everything, right? Just look at Maui, look at Lahaina, and all you got to see is perfect proof to that. They stole that land from those people, and the governor's saying he's going to sell it off to the rich so that
Yeah.
they can build luxury condos and all. And Biden gave out like $700 to the family. You're giving all our money to the Ukraine to fund a war that we don't want to be in. It's going to start a nuclear war that we don't want. Yet at the same time, it was a land grab of the government in Lahaina to steal some of the most expensive and most valuable property in our country from its citizens. That
Yep.
shows you what they're about. I wouldn't have left either.
Well, and we got this video too, with Joe Biden speaking. Maybe we can show that, but to give you kind of people the state of Biden's mind, he kind of tipped the scale a little bit. He basically oops, I said what I wasn't supposed to say. But in this next clip here, if you want to show that, but that's where he basically reveals that.
Is that the
You
one
know,
you have queued up, or is it one of the ones I've got? Is which video you're referring to?
the one was Joe Biden talking in the Congress.
Okay, I think this is it. I couldn't hear it. Could you hear it?
Not really, but basically, what he says,
Yeah,
So I
sorry,
mean,
the audio quality just isn't very good on that clip.
the caption above it basically it's
That's what I'm
hard
trying
to
to get.
hear what he says.
Trying to see if I can pull that up real quick. If it'll let me. Do 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 do. And of course, it's not going to be that easy. So, let me see if I can pull it up here, and I'm gonna try and pull it up separate and pause it. So, of course, I pause it and it blocks the caption. I have an idea. There we go. So it says, it's Joe Biden talking, and he says, you notice when you fly over with a helicopter, those places with blue roofs, they don't burn. So we got to change that anyway. Is that the one you're referring to? He's talking about the blue roofs.
Yes.
So for people that don't know, during Lahaina in in Maui, what happened is you had people, and it's really strange, but all of a sudden, just before the fires, like right before the fires, Oprah Winfrey and other celebrities and millionaires, they all went up and painted the roofs blue on the top of their homes. And it was the same color blue as the UN helmets. When you look at the UN helmets, the blue color, it's the exact same blue. I'm sure there's no coincidence in that, right? But
Right.
anyway, they painted their houses blue, so you've got all these $1 million homes and properties completely destroyed. But any house that had painted with a blue roof, with that UN color blue, was left alone.
Yeah, but they had
They all had prior knowledge.
they had their own independent water system, and they were running sprinklers for 2 or 3 days. And even during the time of the fire, they were running their sprinklers, so their properties were not even touched by the fire.
Right. Yeah. Well, also in Lahaina, they showed a lot of video where the wild trees didn't even catch fire. The homes burnt down, but the shrubs and the trees around the home, they're all fine.
Yep.
How's that even possible, right?
Right.
It's not from a natural wildfire, I can tell you that much. You know?
And that's another thing that we discovered while we were down there, is that there were houses down there that were completely burnt to ashes. There was nothing but scrap metal left behind. But you see green pine trees all the way around the side of the homes that are completely untouched. I mean, they're still green. They're not even
All
brown.
the brush and trees that you would think would be the first to normally burn in a fire and then catch a house, here's the opposite. So
Right.
that just tells you, it's what the subject we're getting to is that these aren't natural fires. These are advanced direct energy beam weapons,
Yes.
and they specifically target the houses, and they don't even burn the brush most times.
No.
Here's something I want to throw up
Yeah.
real quick.
We did a little digging on that, and
Look at this. Can you see this?
children need to be taught the real history of the world. They need to know what happened in the past when one of the
When only the government had guns.
Yep,
Let's cut
exactly.
off a little bit. Yeah,
Exactly.
people need to learn the past. What happened when only the government is allowed to have guns? I hate to break it to you, but when only the government has guns, you don't have freedom, you don't have liberty, you have tyranny. That's what you have. I also have a quote somewhere on here I might try and dig up where George Washington says, if the government doesn't trust you with guns, it's time for you not to trust the government to be in power anymore, because they have evil intentions for you.
Right.
You know?
Exactly. I'm trying to think. Yeah, while we were down there, we were okay. So this was on, I believe, the April 6th. But I was out at that time. That was the first day I started running out and investigating a lot of the stuff. And this is when I really started talking to ranchers and talking to different people. But this is located just, I want to say, southwest of Wheeler, Texas, where we were staying. But I just happened to be out that night. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning. I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing. I got this Fed agent follow me around, and And I was just, I think I was more mad than anything else. I started seeing these lights in the sky, and I knew it wasn't normal.
Mm.
And this particular, you know, airplane that was in the air was flying awful low. And that's when I pulled out my phone and started recording. And what I actually caught was a direct energy weapon being fired, and starting the that particular portion of that area on fire. Um, I know that you got the video of that.
Yep.
But just watch this really closely.
Now, is that the purple one or the one that starts out black?
The one's all black at first,
Okay,
and then
got it.
it's at nighttime.
Here we go.
It's like,
what the is that, dude?
Is that it?
That's it.
All right.
What the is that, dude? What the is that, dude?
Yeah, this is in just on the southwest side of Wheeler, Texas.
Right. And so you clearly see, I'm going to hit it again just 'cause it's so fast.
What the is that, dude?
Yeah, you clearly see that beam, just that particle beam going straight across.
What the is that, dude?
You can hear that, you know.
Yeah.
Right. And I was at a gas station, and I was talking to a couple of people outside, and somebody had actually said, you know, boy, that airplane is flying, you know, pretty low, especially around in that area. So I pulled out my phone, and I wanted to see if anything would happen, anything would come of it. And sure enough, we got that footage. So
right. Yeah, that's wild. And to the fans, viewers, if you just go on YouTube, you go on TikTok, and you look up direct energy weapons, direct energy beams, direct energy lasers, even wildfires, you'll see tons of videos exactly like that from around the world, where you literally see direct beams that are targeting specific areas. And that, I claim, as well as many others, is what absolutely destroyed Lahaina and Maui, and which is one of the greatest travesties of our time. And that wasn't terrorists; that was our government doing that. And they're still, and you know, I was in law enforcement. You follow the motive. Who's making off from this? The government is. They're stealing the land and they're selling it back to the mega rich, who are also funding their campaigns. You see how that turns around? And the citizens, the people, the actual owners that have had this property in their possession for hundreds of years, and their ancestors have just had all of this stolen from them by the government.
Yeah,
that's it. And the rich and the elites.
And at that time, you know, Hawaii, Lahaina, you know, they had a key piece of legislation back from the 1900s when the last queen of that's a and what it so what this is right here. The weapon that's being used, and I found on my research. Oops. So the weapon that's being used in this is called an ELM 2080 Pine Tree Green Radar, and Lockheed Martin Skunk Works is the principal company that puts together all the components. There's 7 different companies that build the bits and pieces of it, but Lockheed Martin Skunk Works is the one that purchased the proprietary rights to those things and assembled them, and they created these. In 2008, they had a contract with the U.S. Department of Defense to generate these. And the idea is that they were going to put them on the AC-130 airplanes that they fly at nighttime when they do overwatch, and they were going to use the radar itself. It has like 5 different functions to it, but one of them is a direct energy weapon, and this can be used to take out, vehicles, missiles, anything that's coming from the ground. They can knock it out just in a matter of seconds. It's also an EMP disruptor, so it causes an EMP by just hitting, a power station or a communication tower or whatever. And so in 2011, if I remember right, 2011, when Joe Biden was the U.S. Senator at the time, he told them that he didn't think they were going to get them done in time. And then in 2012, they ended up finishing it, and they decided they were not going to outfit it on an AC-130. Instead, they were pushing for the programs to have land-based vehicles having these type of weapons to take out drones in the sky. But at the same time, Lockheed Martin they produced a brand new drone, and it's called the Stalker drone. And you can look all this up. It's all available on Google. But the Stalker drone was outfitted with this weapon, and because the government decided they weren't going to purchase these, they allowed Lockheed Martin, Skunk Works, and Raytheon to sell these particular weapons and devices to anybody that's got the money. And so what we found is that United Arab Emirates, Great Britain, both had contracts with Raytheon, and so Raytheon was selling them, as well as Lockheed Martin was selling them to UAE and Britain as well. And so what we discovered in this whole journey is that one of the houses that we went to that burned down, I met with this couple, and their last names are the Wheelers. And they told me that a man just showed up, like not even a few minutes after, he left just like a minute or so after I showed up. I seen the car, but driving away, but he ended up buying their property for 3 times the value of their property. Plus, they got the insurance check as well. They're in their 80s. They've been talking about selling their house and moving into town, Canadian. And so what we figured out was through the money trail is that UAE's had access to this, and UAE's been deploying this, and UAE is essentially responsible for starting these fires. So the UAE can come in with their buyers who are financially funded by UAE to purchase up these lands. So we had to do a little more digging as finding out why are they trying to buy up the Panhandle. And the interesting thing that came back is that land is rich with iodine as well as lithium. And those are the 2 biggest key components of mineral. Instead of buying the mineral rights from the landowners, they just bought them out through, when they're in distress, when there's no home, there's no cattle.
Right. That's the new thing now. If the government wants something, instead of going the nasty route of trying to do the old school land grabs of eminent domain and that messiness, now they just they've actually, if you do a careful reading, they've changed the laws in our country that if there are natural disasters, you can be forced off your land and the government just comes in and takes it all.
Yeah.
Like you look at all these chemical spills that we had from train wrecks. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same thing. They can come in now and just say, "Oh, you got to go. You can't live here anymore." And now we're taking it for our own purposes. So if you're living on anything of value, then they can come in and just take that out. Here's the quote I was referring to. I found it. When government takes away a citizen's right to bear arms, it becomes a citizen's duty to take away the government's right to govern. George Washington, General George Washington, first president of the United States.
Twice.
I love that. I love the quotes. I love reading the founding fathers and the quotes they write. What they try to teach today in schools is the complete opposite of what the founding fathers taught. But listen to some of this. They who would give up essential liberty and temporary security I messed that up. Those who would give up essential liberty for temporary security deserve neither liberty or security. Benjamin Franklin.
Yep.
So that's the thing. They're always like saying that they got to take away our rights to protect us. Well, that's not protecting us when it takes away all your rights. You have no more protections. Um, Again, when the people fear the government, there's tyranny. Well, I tell you, I'm dyslexic. I'm backwards here. When the people fear their government, there is tyranny. When the government fears the people, there is liberty. See, when people have guns, the government fears the people. You have what's called liberty. When the government takes the guns and then the people fear the government, that's called tyranny because there's no one to protect you when all the guns are one sided.
Yep.
And it was Patrick Henry who said, "Give me liberty or give me death." You know, Thomas Jefferson said, "The greatest danger to America's freedom is a government that ignores its own constitution." Well, yeah, we're seeing that every day now. Thomas Jefferson also said, the tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. It is the natural nature. Fed with the blood of patriots and tyrants. That means that government turns evil.
Mm-hmm.
The most bad government is grown out of too much government, Thomas Jefferson. The two enemies of the people are criminals and government. So let us, the writing's really small. So let us tie the second down with chains of the Constitution, so the second will not become the legalized version of the first. In other words, the government turning into criminals. Oh,
Yep.
gee, the biggest problem today is our government's all corruption. It's all criminals. Why do you think? I was just trying to reach out to a guy about coming on doing a show who made all these connections, how all these congressmen don't make any money until they get to Congress and then they become multimillionaires. That's corruption. That's corruption. That's not
Yep.
right. You would go to jail for that. Anyone else would. But but they have a system where they pad themselves. So it's George Washington, a people ought not only be armed and disciplined, but they should have a sufficient arms and ammunition to maintain a status of independence from any who might attempt to abuse them, which includes their own government.
Yep.
Government is not reason. It is not eloquence. It is force. And force, like fire, interesting connection there. Force, like fire, is a dangerous servant and a fearful master. George Washington. All right. The thing that separates the American Christian from every other person on earth is the fact that they would rather die on his feet than live on their knees. George Washington.
Exactly.
When any nation mistrusts its citizens with guns, it is sending a dangerous message. It no longer trusts its citizens because a government has evil plans for those citizens. George W. Washington. So, and then Reagan says, the most terrifying words in the English language are, "I am from the government and I'm here to help." Ronald Reagan.
Yep.
See?
And, one of the other things I wanted to kind of point out about this fire was that in my course of investigation, I was able to actually pinpoint where the fire started. And I believe one of the arsonists. Now, I've spoken at length with a friend of mine who is a semi-retired firefighter, and he says yes. Oftentimes, you're going to see folks who have access to certain type of arson type materials. Most generally, folks that have a license to have access to potassium pomegranate, for example, and in this case, we were able to identify the fire as being arsonist in nature because, as you see this background in this picture here, you'll see the fire is kind of an orange color. Okay, so when you look at the violet and the purple color, you're going to see 3 potassium sulfate, 1 potassium nitrate, and potassium chloride. Now you take those two or three ingredients, and you separate them into a ping pong ball, and you drop them from just a general height. And when it hits the ground, they start to mix. They become combustible. Now the fire departments have a drone they're capable of having, and they have a license to be able to put these ping pong balls into it, and they're able to take it up into the air and drop it. And this is what it looks like. And so fire departments have access to this. You have to have a license in order to have one of these. Now, I also do understand that certain people in the pharmaceutical industry also have access to these type of materials as well. And so they use this. It essentially is to control the spread of the fire. So they fly ahead of the direction of the fire, and they'll drop them around the edge of where the fire's at to start that area on fire. So by the time the fire does get there, that area is completely burned out. But what we discovered in our course of investigation is that this particular device was used to start the fire. And this was located at Smokehouse Creek fire. That's the big one that started this whole thing. There were during my time down there were spots all over the place that were just erupting. There was fires just breaking out all over. And I've had a lot of ranchers that were telling me that they've seen either a drone in the air shooting a DEW, a direct energy weapon, or they heard buzzing, and what you'll hear buzzing from is this particular device. And I can bring up, if you like, how this particular drone works.
Drone amplified strategy for combating wildfires is not unique, but its methodology definitely offers a new approach. Containing fires by setting others, called backburns, to consume the dead wood and other materials that help fuel larger fires is nothing new. However, the use of unmanned drones to drop what the company is calling dragon eggs could prove to be safer and more effective. The dragon eggs contain potassium permanganate, which is simultaneously extremely flammable when exposed to an ignition source, but also proven safe to handle and transport by drone. The system, called Ignis, provides 400 dragon eggs per drone. When commanded, the remotely controlled Ignis drone punctures and injects the eggs with glycol. This starts a chemical reaction that results in the egg igniting 30 to 60 seconds later at a rate of up to 120 eggs per minute. Onboard sensing and embedded AI helps ensure accurate deployment of the firebombs without putting firefighters in even more danger. Ignis has been used extensively on many of the wildfires in California, Colorado, and Oregon this year, and according to a report from Digital Trends, the Department of Agriculture estimates that the system is more cost-effective than using a manned helicopter to perform the same job, saving upwards of $14,000 per day. For Thomas, I'm Jeff Ranke, and this is the Thomas Industry Update.
Yeah, sorry I was lagging a little bit, but I think it got the point across. Yeah, so they're using technology where they're intentionally starting fires. And as Shawn and I were talking right before we started the show, I had footage of helicopters. Everyone knows about the Canadian fires that were so bad last year in Canada. And I had footage of 2 to 3 different sites. I was trying to find it. I couldn't find it to put on the show like I wanted to. But it showed that they were sending helicopters in Canada that were actually dumping buckets of fire onto the forest, starting fires intentionally starting fires up there.
Yeah.
And Shawn was explaining how that works.
So the way it uses the same type of chemicals inside of this bucket, and the flap of the bucket, they've got these little sharp razor edge pieces. And so as the chemical comes out, it rips open the package. And so you got the accelerants, the compound and the accelerant mixing as it comes out of that bucket. And it's just, you'll see a big, kind of like a big gasoline just being dumped right out of that bucket into the ground. And I know that they use that They're supposed to be using it for controlling fires. But, if you take a look at all the criminal complaints within fire departments across the United States, you're going to see a large proportion of those fires that are being started by firefighters who have been paid off by land developers or, corporations that are trying to do land grab or building grabs or whatever. So this is not a far-fetched thing. This has been a kind of a track record for a long, long time. So
Yeah, so what they're supposed to be used for is creating fire breaks to actually stop fires. But if you can create a controlled burn and burn out an area, you remove the fuel source to create like a wall for when the fire gets there, you stop it. That's the idea. But the problem is we're finding more and more that they're actually using these to start the fires to begin with.
right. And yeah, this is a really good map here. You'll see where this is very very unheard of. This is not a normal pattern when
Nope.
you're seeing these many fires breaking out at the same time.
Right.
What we saw last year, all these fires create so much
This is from
smoke.
last year. I
Yeah,
took this photograph from the Canadian fires last year.
and then and what I've been hearing is that Bill Gates it's really adamant about trying to supposedly stop global warming and through the use of different types of methods, spraying chemicals in the air. Fires being started is another one, where the smoke itself would block out UV rays and things
He
like
says
that.
he wants to get rid of all the trees.
Yeah. Well, I personally, I think the reason why that they're doing this is because they know that there's a lot of folks out there who don't live in the big cities.
Yeah, and that brings us to my next photo. So this was last year in Canada, but in a few years before that in the northwest of the United States, check out this photograph. How does that look? That's insane. That was a few years prior in the northwest of the United States. Look at that.
Yep.
Look at that. Now, check this out. Boom. I took this screenshot in September 12, 2020. I said, does it look familiar? Globalist Satanic Agenda 21, or renamed Agenda 2030. That's what Shawn was just referring to.
Yeah. And World Economic Forum has this strategy where they're trying to get 15-minute cities established. But how do you get people who are living out in the wilderness, in the mountains, in the forest, and like in the Panhandle, for example, where your nearest neighbor is more than 5 miles away? The average person that lives in the Panhandle owns somewhere around between 250 to 500 acres of land. Okay, and that's most of it is cattle grazing. Now, if you go up to like the northwestern corner of the Panhandle, that's where you're going to see a lot of cotton fields and wheat fields and things like that. But if you go down into the Panhandle area, you're going to see nothing but just rocky soil, patches of grass here and there. Yeah, exactly. And the World Economic Forum strategy is to force these people out of those areas into the cities. And so once they start getting all those folks into the cities, exactly, right there, yeah.
You read this book, it tells you this. It tells you that that's their goal, that's their agenda, is to create these 15-minute cities, as Shawn just spoke about. And by the way, in Lahaina and Maui, right before that happened, they just had conventions on building 15-minute cities in that exact spot. Oh, but how are we going to do this unless we destroy what's there to build back better or burn back better? Do you understand now? And Shawn also alluded to this going on, and this similar thing happened in China, whereas here they call it the Great Reset. All right, the Great Reset. Just like I showed you the name of this book I just held up, the Great Reset. Okay, so the Great Reset and Build Back Better. Those are things you hear, but what people don't understand is, see, the same thing happened in China And as I talked about on my last show, it was the Rockefellers, not Rockefellers, it was the Rothschilds who put Mao Zedong into power, creating modern China.
Yeah.
Not to mention creating all the one-sided trade deals with the U.S., where we essentially gave the strongest point of our country, our manufacturing base, and gave it to China for almost zero, for nothing. All right. So China now didn't have a pot to piss in, and their people had to ride to work on bicycles. And now they're one of the most richest and advanced cities in all the world. Why? Because of the globalists right here. Our politicians, our leaders sold us out and gave all our manufacturing over there also to slave labor. And I do mean slave labor, where they have suicide nets on buildings so that the slave children can't even commit suicide to escape their slavery. Yet everyone here talks about Black Lives Matter and slavery, but no one cares about slavery for the tennis shoes you're wearing today. Really? Or where our stuff's coming from. No one cares about modern slavery. How about, this is just a thought, if slavery's wrong, and I believe it is, it should be wrong for everybody and not just one race or one color. If it means that much, we should be ending slavery for the real slaves of today, including the trafficked children across our border, which is the modern slavery.
Yeah, and I've got a story about that too. So when I was coming back from Texas, I flew out of Houston, Texas, back to Chicago. And when I got on the plane, I was one of the first ones on the plane. I found my seat and sat down and waited. And there was a bunch of people from Venezuela, women, children. There was one young guy, about 25. He could speak English pretty well. And so anyway, they came in, and the one lady was about 33. She sat next to me, and the guy that was 25 sat next to her, next to the window. And then on this side of the aisle seat, there was a woman in her mid-20s with 3 kids. And I said, I took the opportunity just to introduce myself and try to find out, who they are or why they're there. And here's the gist of it. So the lady next to me showed me on her phone her 2 boys, 11 and 13, that were killed by their handlers on the way to America. And I asked her, I said, well, why didn't you just go somewhere else? She said it didn't matter, because she said the minute our mayor got the money from the UN and NATO, they sent handlers in from third world countries. And these handlers came in and they pushed the people out of the village. And they said, okay, you're going to be in this group of 50 people, and you're going to have one handler for this group. And so this handler basically is making sure that everybody is going on this trail, this path, or whatever. And her 2 boys fell behind because they were forcing them to try to keep up, and they couldn't keep up. So the handler got pissed off and shot both the boys and killed them. And she took a picture of them just before she had to leave. And so
they say 80% of the women coming across the border, if not more, are raped.
Yeah, and that was a pretty they mentioned that was a pretty common occurrence. But she said that she was being sex trafficked to Chicago, where she's going to be working in a pimp house. So I gave them my business card, and I said, if you ever need help, you need to reach out, you give me a call, and I will make arrangements. I will make a way to get there. I'm only 2 hours away from Chicago, so I could drive down there. I could pick her up, and I could bring her back, and I could take her to a safe house. And I don't have to worry about, her being found or whatever. But the thing of the story is that a lot of people don't understand is that we, the taxpayers, are paying for all of this. We're paying for UN, and then UN uses that money to get these
money, housing, food, cell phones, credit card accounts.
And that's another thing, is that this particular woman and this guy and this other lady with the 3 kids told me they don't get that money. Their handlers do.
Their handlers get it. Yeah, the thing is, they're indentured servants, slaves, and they have to work off their time to the handlers to be in here. And that, by the way, that all goes back to the political parties as well that have their hand knee deep in all that crap too, especially when they can control the voting status of these people, especially to be one-sided.
Exactly, and they're being forced to go.
Corruption.
They're
Corruption.
being.
You want to know what the biggest problem with America is? It's our government is corrupt. Our intelligence agencies are corrupt. Our federal agencies are corrupt. The FBI is corrupt. They're all corrupt. The judges now are being taken over to be corrupt too. When you see these one-sided political show trials where they're trying to remove political opponents, again, for one-sided justice. Oh, by the way, hate crimes. One of my friend's kids got beat up by a bunch of black kids. They all said, guess what? We're beating you up. 12 kids against one. And they said, we're beating you up because you're white. Is that a hate crime? No, because hate crimes are only against a minority group. If you're white, hate crimes don't apply. So you got one-sided justice.
Yep.
One-sided justice. And by the way, hate crimes is a big farce anyway. We already have laws to punish people for doing criminal acts. You don't have to say we're going to punish you further because it's a so-called hate crime. Again, that's just it's a manipulation of the law. It sounds nice on the surface, but the way it plays out, it doesn't work that way. Then you send someone to jail for 20 years on a hate crime when they just might have gotten into a normal fight or something. But again, it's a one-sided law being used one way, and that's not right. It's not right.
No.
And you know what? The father, when his son got beat up by these 12 black boys in their neighborhood, the father told me, he's like, I had to sit down and have this talk with my son that even though what they did was wrong, you can't allow to have hate come in your heart for people that are different than you or a different race than you just because what they did was wrong. Don't look at everybody, believing or thinking that same way. But it's our media, our government, and our education system that are gaslighting and causing these divisions. Yeah. The problem is it shouldn't be all this, race that. We're one people. We all bleed red. We all are children of God, But it is the oldest tactic in the military tactic in the book, divide in order to conquer. Just like in prisons. Why do you think in prison, it's all this gang, that gang, this gang? Because if they can keep them segregated in gangs, they can control them. Yeah. If they united, they could never control them. So this is a giant prison where they do the same thing to us on the outside. They want us divided from each other so that we can never unite to be against the real enemy, the corruption that's going on in our country, and that corruption that's causing the destruction of our country.
Yep. And, and that's the thing is, I have this policy of the left, bringing the left, the right back to the center, because if we don't do this, if we don't get together, I have differences to a lot of people. I don't always agree on everything, but hey, that's okay. Because, what works for you works for you, but what works for me is going to work for me. But the thing is that we have more similarities than our differences. And they don't want us to focus on these similarities. For one, we're all American. 2, we bleed red. 3, we're children of God. 4, we believe in the family value cores, right? We want marriage, we want children, we want to build a good and decent life. And another thing too is that similarities. We all have faith in something. Okay, we all believe in the Creator in one way or another. How we go about it, that might be the difference. But that shouldn't be that we shouldn't allow that to come between people. But we should say, hey, you know what? You're my neighbor. If you need anything, come on over, knock on my door. I'll answer it. If you say, hey, my baby doesn't have any diapers this week. I don't get paid until next week. Could you help me out? I'll say, sure, yeah, that's not a problem. In fact, I'll even go down. I'll say, hey, what size do they need to wear? I'll go down to the store. I don't only get diapers. I'll get baby formula. I'll get whatever they need, right? And even more. We're supposed to take care of each other regardless. That is our only mission in life. It should be seeking Christ, accepting, forgiveness for our sins, and then turn around and show that back to our neighbors, take care of our neighbors, take care of our families, build each
Jesus said,
other
"I
up.
give you a new commandment, no less than the others," and that is,
Exactly.
and the heart of the commandments was love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, all thy mind, and all thy soul. And Jesus said, "And I give you another one, no less great, to love your neighbor as yourself."
Hmm.
That means all people, you know.
And that's, so back to the fire here. If you want to pull up that clip. So I want you to keep this in mind. The violet and the purple. Okay, so that's 3 potassium sulfate, 1 potassium nitrate, and potassium chloride. Okay. And then if you want to pull up the video of the
Yeah, I took a blacksmithing course, and in blacksmithing course, we learned to judge the heat of the fire based on the color. Okay, so you can know what Sean's referring to is you can do a basic chemical analysis of what the fire is based on its color. All right, that's why I can tell you, like 9/11, most of the only accelerant combustible was the jet fuel. Most of it burned in plumes outside of the building, and you know the exact temperature because you can tell what the temperature is on a heat scale that even a blacksmith uses on a basic metallurgy course. So you're saying
magnesium.
go to the purple video, right?
Yeah, very carefully. You're going to see out, and you're
It,
going to see the
is
purple
that
color.
it? They can't hear you when the video plays, but is that the right one?
Yeah, that's the right one. So just
Okay.
pay.
Yes, that's a long video, but that is absolutely 100% physical evidence of a controlled chemical burn that's intentionally created. That is not natural to history or
No.
to nature, rather, in any which kind of way, no matter how you cut it. Fires do not burn in that color, but as Sean pointed out, these chemicals, when mixed together, do. So that is not natural.
And you can
Right,
see
Sean?
the bottom of the fire itself was a magnesium sulfate. It was a white color, but the top of the fire you can see this violet and a purple color, and that's the 3 potassium sulfate, 1 potassium nitrate, and potassium chloride. And so we know that there were accelerants that was used, and this was taken. This was taken on in March 26th, the day that Smokehouse Creek fire started, and this was the point. This particular area, which is outside of Canadian, down by the Canadian River, Smokehouse Creek fire. This was where the fire started, and so the gentleman that I actually posted it is the director of a pharmaceutical company in Canadian Texas. Yeah.
Yeah, so Shawn was able to research back to the guy who posted that video. You know that, and it turns out he's connected to a pharmaceutical company. There's no coincidence there. There's definitely a connection. You know what's funny? If you listen to firefighters and investigators that talk about arson, one particular thing about arson is that the arsonists have like some kind of a sick pleasure, like where they get off on taping and being present at their fires. In fact, in law enforcement, they always taught us at arson, look who's on the scene, because the ones who create the fire will almost always be there glorifying and watching what they created. And so the fact that Shawn was able to make a connection between the man who posted that video and a possible connection to the company that actually started the fire is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah. And so, you know, that's the big thing is that, you know, knowing when we know who starts the fire, that is a big key element. But the bigger element is how they start the fire. And, you know, if there was a way that we the people could find a way to restrict access to these type of chemicals, and those people who do have access to it, you know, have to sign off on it and have some kind of a record of this, you know, which is it's usually pretty common. But here's the big thing is this. So I have my commercial drone license, pilot license, right? And so during the Trump's administration, whenever I wanted to fly my drone, and it's usually above 500 feet, I would have to go to the FFA and report to them ahead of time my flight path direction. This is where I'm going to be flying it. This is the altitude. This is where I'm going. And these are the points that I'm going to, the waypoints. And how long it's going to take for the flight for itself. And what's the purpose behind the flight. Okay. And when Biden became president, one of the first acts that he did with the FFA was they took that policy away. They threw it in the garbage, and they said basically, we recommend that you reach out to the pilots that are going to be in those areas and coordinate with them when you're going to be flying your drone. So this way we don't have accidents happen. So this is how they get away with not having to file with the FFA, so no one can, you know, inadvertently access FFA flight logs to see who's flying those drones and why, and what they're equipped with, all that sensitive information. So they did away with all of it. So this way that they could go and fly these drones, the Stalker drone. I don't know if you got a picture of that or not. If you want to bring that up.
Is that, I just have the one you have with the dragon eggs. That one, or are you talking about a different one?
Okay, so the Stalker drones, the Stalker drones are manufactured by Raytheon and Martin Lockheed Skunk Works, and the original plans with that is that the U.S. was going to purchase it, and as a way to attempt to stop swarms of drones in the future by using the microwaves from the ELM 2080 Pine Tree Green radar. And when Biden became president, he said, "No, we want you to focus on because we've already given you money, that doesn't matter. So we'll give you more money. In fact, we'll give you a bigger contract if you can produce these for our land-based vehicles." Well, this opened up doors for Raytheon as well as Lockheed Martin Skunk Works to sell these Stalker drones with these direct energy weapons to anybody that they want. And the prices are pretty high. Say, like, if I wanted to go buy one, I'm gonna have to produce about anywhere between $2 to $14 million for one of these. But UAE has exclusive contracts as well as Great Britain with Raytheon. Well, Raytheon had a contract with China for a long time, producing drones and these type of weapons. And when they found out that they were selling them to UAE, they placed sanctions on Raytheon. So Raytheon decided, well, that's no big deal. We'll just sell them to wherever we want to sell them to. And so they started selling them to UAE. what we found out in our course of our discovery is that UAE has sent people ahead of time with a ton of money as these buyers to go and chase these natural disasters or climate disasters, and to go and essentially buy up this land. Now, we found out in our course of investigation, this happened about a year to 2 years prior, that they were flying these drones to map out the panhandle. And in this ELM 2080 green tree pine radar, it also has a LiDAR geology equipment, which means they can scan the ground and they can penetrate the ground and they can get certain electrical resonant deal. When it bounces into the ground and it comes back, it'll tell you exactly what minerals that are in the ground as far as a half a mile down. So they know that there's iodine there. They know there's lithium there. Those are the two biggest components besides natural gas and oil. And so in the panhandle area, they know that's rich with that, especially in the areas where there's a lot of these poor ranchers that don't have, they couldn't afford insurance on these properties. And they knew this, and they knew that the wind was going to be blowing at 60 miles an hour. So this was the day that they launched their operations, the attempt for a land grab.
I found some of the pictures of the stalker drones. I'm loading them up now. So it'll take me just a minute to get those going. So just keep going.
So the stalker drones, they could be launched 3 different ways. First one, they could be launched what's called VTOL. VTOL is the same thing like the stealth Harrier jets, where they can just take off and go up and then just take off. The other ones is they can be launched from a tube where the wings are folded down, get put into this tube, and then they shoot them out. The other one is what they call the slingshot version. And that is where it can be on a portable, it could be on a handheld. It basically is on a big slingshot, and they can shoot it right off of there. It goes up into the air, wings open up, and they can start a remote piloting these type of drones. What's interesting is about this. So back in December of last year, so Martin, Lockheed Martin Skunk Works signed a contract, exclusive contract with T-Mobile, the phone company, for access to all their 5G towers in those areas.
Wow.
All right. So these particular drones can be piloted from anywhere in the world by just having one person launch it. And they have solar panels on the wings. So they have an indefinite flight path, a definite flight life. And so they could power these things from the air. And this particular drone can get up to 16,000 feet. But it can also get real low, and it could fly 10 feet off the ground right next to your house, because they can get into these areas, these small crevices and small areas. So that's how versatile these drones are. And they can launch, any type of weapon from a payload system from that. But the biggest payload that they have, the one that works the best for it, is the ELM 2080 green tree pine radar. And it has 5 functions to it, which is one, like I just said, it allows it to use a LiDAR to actually scan what's below the ground, what mineral elements that are there. There you go. And as you see the bottom of the craft there, that little ball that's in the front.
Ball in the front.
Yeah, on the front. That is the ELM 2080 green tree pine radar.
Now, and there's another shot here from the rear.
Right. So the one that's in the rear is actually that is the camera. So it allows it to be able to see very, very close. It gets a really
that's the targeting system, right?
Yeah, that's the targeting system. But the
here you go.
Yep, there you go. And so basically, they can operate it from a ground source, and as you see it going on the left side and the right side, they could see the camera where the camera is actually seeing the soldiers. They could see houses. They could see infrastructure. You could see anything and everything. It not only has just a regular camera, but it's also got the X-ray function, so it can see penetrate buildings. And it also has the ability to.
There's up close.
There we go.
Another one up close. Look at that. And here's one firing, or this is a.
Yep, it's actually shooting the direct energy weapon at other drones. And actually, this picture here was taken over China Lake in Southern California when they were doing their trial runs.
Okay.
And so they found that this would be a very effective weapon against any and all the other types of, like, especially like swarms of drones, like micro-sized drones.
Right.
And so
the anti-personnel drones.
Yes. And this actually can knock out vehicles. It could by sending a microwave, and it would cause an EMP to fry the electric cars, or any car that has any electrical control system. And so basically, if they're flying one of these, you really don't. There really is no safe place, so to speak, unless you're living in the mountains where you've got a lot of iron ore, where there's a lot of iron ore in the ground. And if you're,
by the way, I talked to in Michigan, I talked to some of the guys that designed and worked on building these things, and I asked them that. I said, "Is there any practical means to hide or escape or evade these things?" And the guy laughed at me, and the engineer that builds them, and he laughed and said, "No."
Yeah.
Now, like you said, there's some practical things on a minor level, but that's just not isn't going to be a situation for most people,
Right. So you could have, you could go and you could buy one of those EMP proof devices and put them on your car, but the reality is this particular weapon can pinpoint right to your motor. It can burn a hole right through it, right through the engine block. And that's one way they can disable it. So
now that brings up another thing, a point I wanted to make tonight, and that is if you look again to Maui and Lahaina, all right, many of the cars, okay, first of all, to talk about some of the things that happen with people trying to evacuate in their vehicles on the highways. Number one, you had law enforcement that stopped them and refused to allow the people to evacuate. Well, that dude should have been shot on sight, frankly, as far as I'm concerned. But then again, you can't do that when you're disarmed people and your government turns against you. Many people died because law enforcement refused to allow them to leave. All right, refused to allow them to leave, number one. Number two, it was found in their vehicles, and I'm going to pull up a picture here that you sent me earlier from your stack. Look at this. All right, look at the damage of this vehicle. Now imagine a highway full of vehicles like this, where again, notice the trees in the background are still standing, but you have cars where the glass has been completely melted, the vehicles rubble, and the craziest thing, when you see these vehicles on these highways in Lahaina, people didn't even try to exit their car as the fire was coming for them. They didn't even try to exit their vehicles. The majority died inside the vehicles. Now, that's brought up all kinds of questions and theories, but one of them I want to bring to people's attention is this. Some people suggested, now this is only a theory, but in these circumstances and given the level of what we're having to face and deal with, I think these are very legitimate things that we need to be asking ourselves. But one of the theories that somebody put out is, how all the new cars have these little screen cameras in them and digital touch points? What happened if those exploded in the car with a poison toxic gas that rushed in the car and killed the people before they could even open the doors and try to evacuate? Not only that, maybe disabling the the system to be able to open the doors to begin with.
Yep.
There's a question: is that possible? What if your phones are designed to do the exact same thing? All right, because people were questioning, why did so many people die in their vehicles and it didn't look like they tried to evacuate? Almost like they didn't have the ability to evacuate, like something happened to them. And some claim it may be possible that something triggered their screen pads and our electric vehicles now to explode with a poisonous gas to where the people died before they could even get out the car. Now, that said, that always stuck out in my mind. Always stuck out in my mind. And that said, this week I found a video. I tried to find it tonight, but I couldn't find it. I need to go back and look for it. I found a video this week by accident, random. Some guy said it was making a joke about what happens when your ex-girlfriend calls to try to get in touch with you, right? He's like, nope. He puts his phone on the ground, he takes a hammer and he starts beating the phone. And it's a big funny joke, all right? But the phone caught fire, released an enormous amount of gas, and blew up. Yep. And I was like, holy crap. Holy crap. He hit it with a hammer. The phone exploded and a ton of gas, toxic gas, poured out of that cell phone, a standard little smartphone, all right? He just hit it 3-4 times with that hammer, and it blew up, and like I said, and really fast, it started just spewing all this toxic fumes.
That's the lithium ion batteries that's in these phones. You remember, back in the day, you could take your phones and open them up and take the batteries out.
Right.
Well, they designed them so that you cannot open these up. You cannot take the batteries out.
And you know why? So you can't remove the recording devices.
Exactly. And so that's why all of these phones are filled with lithium ion batteries. And every time they come out with a new phone, they say, oh, yeah, they can get 12 hours or more charge or 36 more hours of charge, until you have to charge it up again. Well, think about this, too. In Lahaina, they were forcing people there to buy electric cars. They started outlawing gasoline automobiles, 2 years prior, because they said, oh, well, we have this, what they call the emissions rule. So my daughter, who used to live in Hawaii, every year she's got to take her car in and get it tested for the emission control. And so if her car is producing too much carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide, then she has to get all these components replaced, and it's going to cost her an X amount of money, which is a lot. So you're forced already. You have to take them in, and you have to get these emission stuff done. But they said, well, get around that. You don't have to do that. Well, you just go get an electric car, then you don't have to pay X amount of money for all this other emission controls. And so you don't have to worry about it. And if you look at Lahaina, it's not like you're traveling, 1,000 miles to go to DC for a meeting or something. You drive an electric car. You just go on just wherever is on the island there. It's just a small distance. So it was more practical for a lot of the folks that lived there. So they started purchasing a lot of electric cars. Well, we know this is that it doesn't take a whole lot for a hacker to literally hack into your car, lock you in your car, cause a sensory overload into your battery. And then if, the direct energy weapons comes through, well, guess what? Your car's already burning for one. You're getting those fumes and those toxic coming into the car.
With the amount of toxic gas that phone released in a very short burst, blew me away.
That's just a small, very small.
If you were in an enclosed space and breathe that in, I couldn't imagine.
And that's another safety feature that electric cars have. If the electric car catches on fire, the doors automatically lock.
There's been stories in the news about Teslas right now where people got locked in their cars and burnt to death.
Yeah. So, I don't know if you guys have seen that video of that barge ship that had all these electric cars on them, and they were going through the ocean. and the ocean is nothing but salt water. Salt water and lithium ion do not.
Somebody just mentioned that in the comment section.
Yeah, and that that all these cars caught on fire right on the barge, and by the time that barge got back to mainland to the United States, well, those cars are all burnt to a crisp, and there's nothing much left of them. And so, I purposely believe that all of this is done on purpose. It's designed for the
Ginger
maximum
21.
effective control and the reduction. But at the same time, they compartmentalize so much of it so that you have to spend hours and hours and hours literally trying to find the money trail and tracking it from how this is connected to this and that's connected to that and so on. And that's what I've done in my investigation. And that's another thing that we're going to show in that documentary is we're going to show the receipts and we're going to show you how they're all connected and interconnected with each other and how they've worked so hard to try to set this up.
Yeah, well, that brings me back to a point I was talking about earlier, which is, we have the concept that we hear of and we're told about the Great Reset, right? The Great Reset, Build Back Better, the Great Reset. We hear about this all the time. Okay, but one thing that people don't understand is the Great Reset is not something that's new. Okay, that's not a new concept. The Rothschilds created Mao Zedong in China, and
Mhm.
Mao Zedong, people are always like, "Who's the most evil person that ever lived?" And everyone always is pre-programmed to say Hitler, and that's not true. Mao
Right.
Zedong was much worse. Mao Zedong killed 1 billion of his own people. 1 billion of his own people. All right. Now, why did he kill 1 billion of his own people? Well, you have to ask the Rothschilds, because what happened is they put him in power because China did this program, which was a Rothschild program that they called, are you ready for this? Not the Great Reset. It was called the Great Plan. Well, how funny the Great Plan sounds to the Great Reset, right? You see what I'm saying? Of Carl Schwab, right? So they enacted this great plan, and the great plan was what? The great plan was they're going to remove all people out of wilderness areas, out of self-sufficient farms, and they're going to force them into essentially 15-minute cities where they can be chip tracked, controlled, put into the social credit score system, all of that. So what I'm saying is modern China isn't by accident, and it's not because they were so amazing that they went from, pissing in a bucket and riding a bicycle to work for their citizens to being the most advanced city and superpower in the world today. It's because the globalists, that with the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and all the power elites, the globalists, and I call them globalists because they don't care about America. They don't care about America first or nationalistic pride or freedom or constitution. They care about creating a one world government, a new world order. And that's what it's all about. And that's in here too. If you read the book, that's what it's all about. So, and that's Carl Schwab's book. Carl Schwab, The Great Reset. Okay. It's his book. His name's right on the cover. So go read it. And not only that, but read their other books like A Brave New World, Aldous Huxley, all those kind of things. But basically, China was the beta test for what they want to implement through the rest of the entire world once they create their one world government, their new world order. That, my friends, is the Great Reset. That's what the Great Reset is about. And if you listen to their own words, they say this: there is no room for Christianity in the Great Reset. No room. That means all Christians, you're going to be made to go away. You're going to be made to go bye-bye. There's no room for you in the new coming system of the Great Reset. That's not a joke. That means that they are planning the destruction of you, your family, and your livelihood. And they want to destroy the U.S. because they believe that you can't have a country that believes in freedom and constitution and pride and God. And they believe that by destroying the U.S., they can destroy much of that because Europe Look, most of the world right now is communist anyway. Europe's communist, socialist. I lived in Rome, Italy. It was socialist, which is just, the other side of the coin of communism. They're the same thing ultimately. South America's mostly communist. Most of Europe's communist. Germany, you couldn't say anything else. France, look at the way they're going, communist. Canada, that Jacoboon in Canada, who I really got to stop myself from swearing. Can't stand that jackaloon and who's running Canada, who's a big. I'm trying. Is a worthless human being and a satanic piece of trash. But that dude, he openly praises in his government to his people that he believes the best form of government he idolizes is China. What does that tell you?
Yeah.
You don't think that's going communist? And really, you've got Putin and Russia saying, "Hey, what happened to America? I thought it was the land of the freedom and the Constitution. Y'all aren't, and morality. Y'all don't have any of that anymore." They're the ones that are preaching to us when they're trying to be more open to religious freedom, God, Christianity, and capitalism. Which, by the way, capitalism. People always want to blame capitalism. That it's not that capitalism doesn't work; it does. It's the abuse of capitalism that doesn't work, and that's what we see happening now. But look, capitalism brought Russia from a completely bankrupt country back to a superpower in a very small amount of time. That's how powerful capitalism actually is when it functions properly. The problem is when you have a corrupt government and you have got a corrupt financial institutions, that's called fascism.
Yeah.
That's what we're in now. We're no longer in freedom. We're in fascism. The American government right now is run by fascism.
Mm-hmm.
When you have big corporation in bed with government to do their agenda against you, that's fascism. And that's what we have in the U.S. right now. That's what's going on. That's why the governments are like, oh, we're not banning people online. It's the private companies and they can do what they want. Yeah, because they're doing backdoor deals with you on that topic. Oh, you want such and such ban? Okay, dude, good. They're gone, unless Elon Musk comes in and buys them out and, undoes that. And you ask Elon Musk why he did that? For the survival of our country, he said, to survive and protect, to protect free speech. And in my last episode, I gave you the very definition of what free speech is. That's not it. I thought I had it queued up and I took it down. The definition of free speech is I'm allowed to effing offend you, you little snowflake. If you can't offend someone, you don't have free speech. And again, those laws go one way because when all those people start talking about their crap, it offends the hell out of me, but no one cares. It's only one-sided. Yep. Again, I think the First Amendment should have been guns and then free speech because without guns, you don't have free speech. But back to what Shawn was saying. Here you go. I found this. Shawn?
Yeah, so this is what you're seeing right here is the new Raytheon high energy laser that is mounted to, the back of a pickup truck or APV or whatever, like this particular truck here. And it's not just a direct beam, but it can do a wide berth type of beam. And you'll see like a lot of these little small mini drones all over the place. Like, for example, like today, Iran decided to attack Israel, and they're using a lot of these mini suicide drones. And so this particular weapon here it's got a new name now for it, but this is part of the Iron Dome. And what it does is it sends out a microwave that's broad, it's kind of wide. And what it does, when it goes out, it hits these drones and it short circuits their systems. And so essentially they just kind of like they pop, okay, and they burst into flame because they have lithium ion batteries inside each one of these little small mini drones. And that's why they're so easy to target. Now you got to ask yourself, where are these little small mini drones? Who's selling these? Well, this goes back to Raytheon. Raytheon sells the small mini drones that they're called suicide drones. And so Raytheon is actually making a huge profit, just as Lockheed Skunk Martin works. They're making a huge profit We got 3M Corporation. We've got a lot of these different corporations. They're making money over fist by creating the defensive weapons and the offensive weapons. So, and in the essence, it's this: the private corporations, the military corporations, they're making money, and the government that we have today is utilizing the money and the resources to create these wars. And so, on top of this, they're also using this as a way to steal land from people, force people into 15-minute cities. The overall goal of all of this technology is a way to control people, because we don't have the dollars, or nor do we have the lobbying power to be able to have access to any of these type of weapons. But UAE, United States, UK, France, Britain, China, Russia, all of these countries, they have access to all of these things. And the end result is this: they're going to drive people into the cities and get people out of the country, get them into the cities, where their ultimate goal is, like you said, one world government. You can control the small amounts of population in a 15-minute city. And I'm going to put this in layman's terms. So what is a 15-minute city? It is what we used to call the plantation down south, where they kept the slaves. Well, when you were a slave on the plantation, you didn't need a car. They gave you housing, they gave you food, they gave you clothing, or what they thought you needed, and you had no place to go. And so they kept you there by giving you the basic minimal needs. And any thought that you had about freedom, they would drive it out of you. And a lot of times it didn't take physical force. It just took a mental abuse by just saying, well, where are you going to go? You don't have any family. You don't have any friends. You know, you belong to me. You're my property.
They're talking about re-education centers now.
Yeah, and then of course they had the
social
bloodhound packs, and they we would chase you, we would kill you with the bloodhounds if you ever try to leave, And so a lot of folks, that grew up in the slave plantations, when they became free, honestly, a lot of them would tell you, we really don't know what to do. Other than we were told we were going to give 100 acres of land, we were going to get a free mule and a house or whatever, some tools, and then we could do our own farming. But you got to start to think about this too. The Democrat Party is the party of the KKK, okay? And before World War II broke out, they had this huge support for Adolf Hitler. But here's what they don't tell you in the history books, and this is I have the first autobiography of Adolf Hitler that was written by his writer, the guy that wrote his autobiography, and it shows right in there that the Democrat Party in 1935, 1936, they sent 4 people from the United States. Margaret Sanger was one of them, and she was responsible for the genocide program for the Jews. They had several different politicians from the Democrat Party. They flew them over to Berlin, Germany, to meet with Adolf Hitler and to basically give him the plan, the beta program, so that Adolf Hitler could go out and do the things that the Democrat Party wanted him to do. And while in America, down in the South, while they had the KKK thing going on, they had the Nazi Party down there as well. They had the Nazi Party groups. They had the little Nazi youth, clubs that they were teaching the young boys about.
Right, youth brigade.
Yeah, so the one thing I have understood is that the Democrat Party is and was and will always be the party that supported Britain during the Revolutionary War.
Not only that, they were the party that supported the KKK, and they were the party that supported Hitler and the Nazis. There's no, and not only that, even the Bush family, they made their money in oil, and a lot of their money in oil. And guess where that oil money came from? It came from the Bin Laden family, as in Osama bin Laden. Do you think that's a coincidence?
No.
It's not a coincidence. Not only that, there was a man that went to the National Archives and made a case that the Bush family got their original money from Nazi gold, Nazi gold money. That's blood money. All right. What the heck just happened? I tried to put a quote on here and it went wrong. I'll try
George
to
Patton.
change that. Yeah, I'm trying to. Well, as you're talking about, we're getting into some of the things about the Democratic Party. I want to show a quote here from General George S. Patton about about politicians because I think it's awesome and I love Patton. I've read all his books. In fact, I've got his books, the majority of them. In fact, a friend of mine just passed away recently. I was just by his house today, and he was 104 years old. He was
Wow.
the oldest man in our city. They gave him a key to the city. He died this January. His birthday would have been he died in January. His next birthday would have been this June. And I was just telling the family I'm gonna miss his birthday because he always asked for me to come because I always brought him a chocolate cake. The family always brings him like these weird almond cakes and all. He didn't like that. He likes chocolate cake. So he's asked for me when I'm coming because he knew I'd bring him what he wants is a chocolate cake. And I'm like, what's wrong with you people? The man wants chocolate. He didn't want all this other crazy, not the almond cakes and stuff like that. He just wants a simple chocolate cake. It's all he wanted, that and coffee. But anyway, this man who passed away, I loved him. His name was Horace, and he fought in World War II, and he cooked for General Patton in World War II. And General Patton complimented on his food and his coffee. So I thought that was pretty cool. I met another guy that worked at a post office that said that he was in General Patton's regiment in World War II. And I asked him, I said, tell me an anecdote about General Patton. And he's like, I can't. Everything that I know about him's already in the books that you've read. You know what I mean? So I was like, give me something. Give me something. You know, I was like, I want something. At least the other guy was like, yeah, he told me my coffee. I made good coffee. He complimented me on my coffee and food. Yeah. Yeah. What they learned in the army is you want the Louisiana people to be your cooks because we know how to cook food here. It's the men here who cook, not the women. It's the men. The men do the cooking here. And we are known for being like some of the best chefs ever. I was with a community up north for a while, and for a while I was the cook for the community. And if they saw what I was putting in the food, they would have a conniption fit. But I would say, shut up, get out of my kitchen and leave me alone. When they ate the food, they were like, man, this is some of the best stuff I've ever had. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. As long as you don't know what's in it. I told them, I said, I said that the Confederates kept a secret from the Yanks in the Civil War. And they said, what's that? I said, it's called seasoning. Get some. I mean, come on. Talk about some of the blandest food. I don't want to eat paper. Use some seasoning. Learn how to cook. Anyway, George S. Patton. Politicians are the lowest form of life on earth. For the majority, that's true. There are some exceptions. Liberal Democrats are the lowest form of politicians. George S. Patton. Now, I'm not trying to hate on a particular party, but I will say this. I am staunchly 100% against abortion. Yep. And no Christian can be a Democrat and still be a Christian. You cannot vote for abortion. Not to mention, I tell some of my own family members, they're like, take that back, John Bell. And I'm like, no, I can't. There's truth. I got a degree in philosophy. I did my thesis on objective truth. Objective truth is truth that's universal. It's truth that doesn't change, like God in the Bible, love and family. That doesn't change. It's universal truth. It's here and on Mars and any other planet. It's truth.
Yeah, like natural laws. Natural laws are God's laws.
That's it.
The thing is, I've learned in my studies in the last 30 years is this, that throughout all civilizations, when you get to there's in my book, The Survivor's Bible, there's a chapter in chapter 25. It's called The 8 Stages to the Rise and Fall of Every Civilization. And this was in 1960. This is all of the world best sociologists and geologists had gotten together, and historians, and they formulated exactly how civilizations rise and fall. But when government seizes the power over the people, the first step is genocide. If you take away the families, fracture the families completely apart, then you can start forcing the idea of abortion as convenience. And abortion is what they call, this is my philosophy, abortions are nation killers.
Oh yeah, it's 100%. Here, no, what you said on, you touched upon the key. If you want to know what makes a healthy and strong society, it is healthy and strong families. That means you have a father, you have a mother, you have children. Children need a father in the home. They need a mother in the home. They don't need divorce. When you can convince a country that over 50% of marriages end in divorce, your society, your country is gone. It's only a matter of time.
Yep. And right now, the divorce rate is hitting at 80%. It is so prevalent and it's so bad that, a lot of the, for example, like the Gen Zs, they're not seeking marriage. They're
Right.
not seeking relationships. There's a lot of young men that do not want to get married, do not want to have a family, because the governments have forced or given the idea to women that they don't need men. That
No,
they can
that's
be
it.
strong and independent without men.
If you have children today, a man has no right to those children. The court's going to give everything to the woman, and a
Yep.
man has no right. So you have no right to your kids. You have no right to what they're taught, how they're raised. Look, I lived in that. I saw that happen firsthand. You know,
Yep.
you have no control of how they're raised, what their values are, and it's terrible. Not
It
to
is.
mention the economic toll of somebody losing their house and their family and everything else. It's just and the system is so overly abused now that
Yeah.
it's just crazy. I mean, you almost have to be stupid to get married and raise a family today. I mean, my heart goes out to them, because the backbone of our country, aside from good farmers and truckers, is good families. They're
Yep.
good families that stay together and raise their kids with good values. And
Right.
that's the beauty of Christianity. It's raising your family. It's raising a healthy family and healthy kids
Yep.
in those views.
Having good values and discipline and
Yeah.
all the things that makes
That
the
we
family
need to be
strong.
healthy. That
Yeah.
we need to be healthy. Yeah. Without those things, your society falls apart. It
It
falls
does.
apart.
It does.
All the liberalism and the craziness they're preaching today, it destroys society. You want to know this. If something is holy and good before Almighty God, or is it evil before Almighty God, here's the only test you need. Is it life giving? Is it
Right.
life giving? So a man and a woman getting married, that's life giving. That's holy. But if you're any degree outside of that, it's not life giving. It's not holy. It's self destruction, not just for you, but it's self destruction for the whole society as a whole. And the
Yeah.
problem is the leaders, the globalists in the world that are running our country and the power and our education system and our entertainment system and our banking system and all this stuff, they know this. They
Yep.
know this. They know that to get away from God, to push their agenda, they have to morally bankrupt and destroy our families and our society, which go together. And
Yep.
that's why you see all the trash you see in movies and television, in education, all of this crap to manipulate and brainwash your children away from the. You know what school is? School is, we're going to indoctrinate your children so that your family doesn't teach them your values. That's what it is.
Exactly.
That's what education has become in the U.S. around most of the world. That's what education has become. It's not critical thinking. It's not. I mean, there's still some job skills in certain areas, but it's indoctrination into these camps, and it goes by that old Aleister Crowley thing: "Do what thou wills, the whole of the law." That's the satanic law. That's what the education systems teach. They teach, hey, if it feels good, do it. There's no consequences. There's no devil. There's no God. There's no hell. There's no heaven. There's no repercussions for anything you do. So do whatever the hell you want, But
Yep.
unfortunately, that's not what God created. And that's why God warns, and the Bible warns, book of Matthew, more people go to hell than go to heaven.
Yeah.
The Bible in the book of Matthew says, wide is the road to perdition, and many are those who enter. Narrow is the road to glory, and few are those who take it. Few are those who take it. Now, to ask this, even people that think that they're good, God-fearing Christians, do you put Jesus as the absolute center of your life and everything you do?
Yep.
Is he the center of your life? You know? And it's tough, because what happens when you have children today that you might have been raised right, you try to raise them right, they come home from school and they're like, Dad, I don't want to be the same gender anymore, or I don't want to believe in God anymore,
Well, and even more so, to kind of put this further, is that the schools do not have to let the parents even know that they're taking their child to a medical clinic to, let's say a boy who thinks he's a girl.
That's satanic.
Medical clinic, and
that's satanic. The whole reason that we have laws as a police officer, the whole reason we have laws of carnal knowledge and you can't have underage sex with people is because they're not at a reasonable age to be able to give consent, because their minds haven't developed enough. They might be going off of hormone and emotion, but they don't have the reason to back that up and realize this is not a good deal and you're being taken advantage of. So if we have those laws to protect minors from predators, and even not predators, but just people who take advantage of them. Well, I guess that's kind of the definition of predator, but you get what I'm saying. Then if we have those laws to protect children, then we should absolutely have laws to protect children from being told by adults, oh, no, you can't believe this way. You got to start believing that way.
Yeah.
It's child abuse. It's child abuse.
It is. It is. And that's why I'm proud to partner with the Millstone Project, who is trying to raise funds to arm the local law enforcement in the Southwest to go after these predators and catch them and punish them. But the problem is the politicians. The politicians are getting away.
That's the problem. The politicians, it's corruption. It's getting more and more and more corrupt. And like I said before, here's a quote I used again on my last show. One of my favorite quotes from Cicero under Julius Caesar. And he said, a republic can withstand enemy at the gate, but it cannot withstand traitors from within. What is he talking about? He was talking about the politicians. Why did Rome fall? Because the politicians became corrupt. They stopped serving the people and they started just serving their own interest. And that's what corruption is. And it got to the point that their country fell. And that's where we are. The U.S. is in the fall of Rome. Why? Because our leaders are corrupt. They're corrupted.
Yep.
And this is a favorite quote, too, I put on the last show from The Art of War, Sun Tzu, that all warfare is based on deception. That's the first rule of special forces.
Yep.
Well, that's the first rule of warfare. All rules based on deception. So when the government's sitting here telling you what to believe on Fox News and CNN and all these things, it's nothing but propaganda that they want you to believe.
Yep.
And then this quote too that I put up of John F. Kennedy before his assassination, where he said there's basically a coup trying to take over our government from within. That's what he said. And guess what? Then they killed him. Yep. That coup is still here in power. That coup created the Bush administrations, plural, created the Clinton administrations, plural, created the Obama administrations, absolutely plural. You don't think Biden's in charge of, Biden is in charge of anything. All right. And especially when there's videos of Obama saying, hey, if I could stay president, behind the scenes, behind some kind of puppet running the show, I would do that. Well, that's exactly what's happened. Yep. You don't think Biden's in charge of anything, do you? I mean, the man can't complete a damn sentence,
Biden actually has to take methamphetamines just to stay awake.
Oh yeah, I mean they drug him way the hell up to be able to go on. Look, why do you think they're like, oh, he's not going to do debates? Because he can't. I mean, he can't. Doesn't have the ability to, but yet, no. Here's the craziness. The government accused Trump and wanted to go after him criminally for having documents that he legally, as a president and former president, was allowed to have. They go after Biden for the exact same thing. Trump's actually innocent of those charges. Biden's actually guilty of those charges. But what did the determination say? And again, Fox and CNN, they're going to mislead you. They may want you to think he's been exonerated. He wasn't exonerated. He was found guilty. He even came out and gave a speech saying he was exonerated. That's a damn BS lie. Lie. He was found guilty. But they said he's too senile and inept to be able to stand for trial. So how can he run for the president of our country in a re-election if you can't stand for a trial because you're not mentally competent?
And that should be in Article 25 right there. If he's not inept to be able to stand in trial for a crime that he committed, therefore he is unfit to be a president of the United States. In the Congress, you've been invoking Article 25 and removing him from office. But they're all kind of in on at the same time. They want to keep him there because, he's a good puppet.
Check this out. There was an article today. Game over for election fraud deniers. Georgia Board of Elections confirmed violations in elections. That's official news that came out. That I can't show it on the screen. You can look that up. Just look up that title. That was news that came out, official news that came out of Georgia's own board. So it's official. You can't deny it. You can't say it's disinformation. Their own board said that they found that there were violations of the process and vote and all that kind of stuff. So their own, it's not conspiracy theory. It's not disinformation. Georgia's own board came out today saying that this was the case for that took place, that they found through their own investigations. And I encourage people to go look that up. Go look that up. Don't take my word for it. Go look up what the official word and the official writing is on that from their own system. Like I said, like I pointed out, it's crazy. And the sad thing is, I mean, we're seeing, and just like I tell people, I'm all for immigration. The U.S. is a melting pot that's great for all races, all countries. The problem is our own government is disobeying our own laws. I don't care what you call it. Illegal immigration is illegal. Illegal. Our government doesn't have the right to break that.
Oh.
It's illegal. But if you look on the UN's website, they have what's called replacement migration. And I call it weaponized replacement migration, which I call modern warfare, which is not a video game. It's it's weaponized replacement migration. When you flood a country with millions and millions of new immigrants, you're going to change the demographics of that country. And there's no doubt that the left is doing this because they want to, influence the voters and changing votes and trying to turn things to their side. So there's a high political agenda in it. But also because it's a new slave class, as we talked about, and these people become indentured servants into that system, which is abusing them. And not to mention, we talked about the child trafficking and the rape of the women that come across. I mean, it's a horrific nightmare. And many of these people are forced. They don't have an opportunity. Not to mention all the ones that are found. I keep talking about with the UNID cards that specify them as soldiers. Yeah, that's no accident that they're bringing hundreds of thousands of soldiers. There's General Flynn, who was put in prison unjustly so, is also making a movie called FlynnMovie.com. Go look up FlynnMovie.com. And in FlynnMovie.com, he talks about his why they put him in prison, why he was a threat, because he was trying to stop these corrupt people in our government. So they ganged up on him and made him go away for a time. And he said that there's already hundreds of thousands of Chinese soldiers that have come across our border in our country to do us harm.
Yep.
To do us harm.
And since 2010, I've actually been tracking NATO's movements. And I know currently right now there are 2,800 cities across the United States that has NATO compounds with NATO weapons, NATO vehicles, helmets, you name it. And they got personnel as well living within those cities, dwelling. And most of those folks there that live in those cities have no idea that their neighbor is a NATO officer or a NATO troop.
Yeah, it's ugly, and that's for a specific purpose, and they're using them to attack. There was one quote from Biden when Governor Abbott was able to shut down the border for a time, and Biden was caught on a hot mic saying, "We need to allow as many of the military age men across the border as possible." So what's he saying there? I mean, and he's already threatened dropping bombs on Texas with Air Force jets and stuff, but what's he saying there when he's saying we need to let all these military age men? I mean, he's sitting there saying that they're planning a coup to be used against us in our own country with bringing in illegal aliens. That's what he's saying.
Yeah, pretty much what he's saying is that he's going to use these military age men as his army against the United States. But at the same time, he's going to tell his commanding officers across the board in the military to essentially go after American citizens and using taxpayer money, weapons, and personnel. And there's going to be a big clash within the military branches that you're going to see a lot of folks that are going to say, no, I'm not going to fire upon American citizens because I swore an oath to the Constitution and to my people in this country. I will not raise a weapon against my own people. And when that happens, you're going to see a lot of outbreak, a lot of infighting within the military bases. So when our military then becomes disfranchised, then you're going to see NATO sitting in Washington, basically surrounding Washington, D.C., protecting Joe Biden and the members of Congress that are in on all this. And it's going to be up to the American people in the end. See, the thing is about tyrants. Tyrants would rather burn down an entire civilization and rule over ashes than to give up their power and let the people rule.
Well, that's exactly what they say. One of their mottos of the globalists are, first of all, they call it the great culling of the herd. Remember the Georgia Guidestone? They want to get the populations down to a very small number because they don't need us anymore. We're the useless eaters. We're the cannon fodder. All right. Yeah. So they want to get the numbers down. Depopulation is one of their biggest goals. All right. So, and then they talk about build back better. Okay. They talk about, but also in their philosophy is order out of chaos. Order out of chaos. They cause chaos to destroy the existing systems so that they can come in and rebuild back their idea of order. That's how it works. That's order out of chaos. That's build back better. Build back better means build back something better in our eyes that meets our agenda after we've destroyed everything else that exists. That's the build back better. Exactly. So it's the rise of the phoenix that rises from the ashes. So the phoenix burns up in the flames, right? And then the phoenix is reborn out of its ashes to rebuild, to build back better. That is what the Great Reset is not about pandemics. No. All right. That's a part of it, but that's not what the Great Reset's about. The Great Reset, building back better, is about destroying existing countries and economies, destroying the dollar so that they can go to digital systems, so they can put the mark of the beast, the implanted chip in your hands and in your foreheads. so that you have to have the mark to be able to buy and sell. That's the new system that no Christian will be able to survive in.
Yep.
That's the Build Back Better. Well, Shawn, we're coming up on 2 hours, and I got church in the morning, so
sounds good.
we'll go ahead and call it here. Oh, real quick though, I want to show up some of the other pictures that you put up.
So this is a picture of a cattle that was burnt to death. Yeah, as you see, there's fields of them out there, but this one particular cattle was trying to flee the fire, and this is what they call the cattle grate. This prevents cattle from actually coming across into the properties, and it's sort of a safety measure. It doesn't really hurt them, but they get kind of stuck in it, but they can get them out. But this one in particular caught on fire, just trying to escape that fire. And this is the image that I took. This is just outside of Canadian Texas.
I want to show this again because it's.
So on this picture here, we did a lot of analysis on this. And so the point of impact of the direct energy weapon is at the lower right-hand corner of the bumper there. As you take a see that where that really dark black mark is. So
Yep.
that is the point of impact with a fire from the direct energy weapon. And you can see that the bumper itself literally heated up to about 6,000 degrees, and it melted so quickly. And with the laser moving and the wind blowing, you can see that it just turned into a liquid form. And as it spreads to the right side of the vehicle, it started to harden up.
Yeah, crazy. All right, what's this one?
So this one here, you're going to see this in the documentary. But if you take a look at this fence line here, you'll see right about 4 or 5 feet into it, you'll see that black mark right there. Okay, so that is the path or the trajectory of the direct energy weapon. It is stopped right as it hit the fence, because on the other side of that fence, right there, there's that white tank. That is a propane tank. And that propane tank is completely white. There's no marks. There's no smudge. No nothing on it. There's no source of heat impact on it. But it's
you think that's because the color of the white paint?
Yeah. So the tank is painted white, and if it had been hit, you would definitely see a black smudge like you do see on the fence here. And so we were
What
able.
I'm asking is, do you think the white paint could be something like the blue paint?
No, and that theory we kind of dismissed that based on the color of the part of the house, and the house is like a multicolor, and it was burnt to ashes. There's actually a row of trees that runs. Okay, so this way. So you go from this fence line here, go all the way out. There's 2 rows of trees, and where this burn mark pattern is on the outside of that tree line.
Why do you think they wouldn't hit the tank?
Well, that's the thing, is they stopped the DEW right at that point of impact.
Maybe it would have been too much of a thing of evidence. Does that make sense?
They could very well be, or they just wanted to burn just a certain path, and they stopped right at that point.
And that's the thing with these lasers; they can do precision paths, even in flight. So, but did you find anything on the blue paint as far as it being effective?
So we found a few houses out there. There's one particular house on top of a hill. It's actually the whole building is painted blue, and it had actually no impact whatsoever. But the house,
not even the roof, all the walls and everything.
Yeah, just down from it, about good 30, maybe 30 yards or so. There's another house there with a garage, and it's all burnt to ashes. The only thing is there is just scrap metal that's just sitting there. And so so I know that particular house, the laser had passed over, because we could see across the road from there. You could see the point of impact, the line of fire, the line of the scorch mark coming up onto the road and hitting the first part of that grass. And then when it gets to the house, absolutely nothing. And then when it jumps off the house and it hits down to the next house, there's actually a scorch mark going from the blue house down to the white house. And that white house is completely burnt to the ground.
In your opinion, let me ask you this. Do you think that the blue paint and that frequency actually repels or protects from the laser, or is it just, this is a no-go, so pass this one over?
I think, here's what I think. I think it was purposely designed this way. And the reason why is because United Nations soldiers, or NATO soldiers, have the blue helmets. They also have is the blue vehicles, the blue and white vehicles. Okay. The top of their vehicles are painted exactly the same blue as their helmets. The side of the vehicles are white, but the top, at the trunk, at the front of the hood is all blue. So we think that they designed this weapon so any opposition force to NATO could be easily destroyed in the matter of seconds. And
Blanketed areas.
it happened to, if NATO is kind of mingled in with that group of cars, well, they could just pass a beam over that whole row of cars, and it will not affect the NATO troops, but it will affect any other vehicle that was mixed in that group.
So it is a frequency thing then.
Yeah, it's a direct energy weapon, microwave. So in this picture, I want to just kind of clarify. So if you look off to the, you'll see the little pine tree right there. That is the second row. Okay, the first row is back this way, and the first row was completely burnt. And then right here, just on the, okay, yeah. So right down here, that is a generator. Okay, this is generator, and then right next to it is a shed, and the shed is white, and the generator is white. And I have another picture somewhere, but you can actually see the point of impact on that generator, the bottom side of it. It melted the bottom side of it at about 6,000 degrees, and it looks like a liquid puddle, just like you see those cars. And it caught this generator on fire. Now, not more than 4 feet away is a power pole. Then there's absolutely no damage to that pole whatsoever.
Mm.
And the house.
And again, you said it was white on the generator and had no effect.
Yeah, so the generator was burned, but it took the point of impact was right there. But it on the ground from the generator to the first tree, and that first row is about 10 feet. And then behind that, which is the second row, you'll see that tree right there. It wasn't even touched at all. But the first row of trees were all scorched. And then coming up to this generator, it hit this generator at the ground level. And then it comes up, and then it hits the shed. You can actually see in another picture I have, you'll see in the documentary, you'll see the path of that beam rolling right up on top of that and going right up on top of the shed. And it destroyed the shed and it destroyed this generator. Okay, so there's another clear evidence. So the house that was here was completely demolished by the fire, but you see this green pine tree that sits right behind it. Absolutely no impact whatsoever.
That's not consistent with any fire, right?
Right, that's not consistent with any fire. And at the size of this house was a 3-story house. So the intensity of the heat itself should have brought that pine tree there down to nothing but smoldering ashes.
And there's nothing, and even look at all the shrubs and dry wood around it that's still standing.
Exactly. And this house was burnt down pretty quickly. So this picture here, this is a Smyer High School agricultural students that volunteered their time to help us with loading this 40-foot trailer. Now, the guy in red, this is Ryan Zink, who was a J6 prisoner. He also ran for Congress down in Texas as well. He did not win, but that being said, he took the last 3 days of his campaign, and he decided out of the goodness of his heart, and because God has spoken to him very loudly and told him that he's not being a godly man by sitting around doing nothing. So he got together with a lot of good people, and we were able to pack this entire trailer with nothing but resources for the local ranchers.
That's awesome. There's a video here. I don't know if I showed it. I want to make sure I do. So you there?
No, that last video, what it was a house, a lady who had sent me that ring video of her house. She said that her and her husband were away at work at the time. They live about 2 hours away from where they work, and she got notification from a Ring camera recording the fire that burnt down her house. So the Ring camera was able to get quite a few images of the fire as it was spreading across there pretty quickly. Now, to keep in mind that the winds were moving about 60 miles an hour at the time.
Right.
So a lot of the panhandle, you'll see there's certain areas, especially around Smokehouse Creek fire, where pretty rocky soil. There's patches of grass here and there. So this is not. It takes an extreme amount of fuel propelled by 60-mile-an-hour winds in order for it to spread the way it does. But we see indications of patterns, direct energy weapons being used down into these crevices. It looks kind of like a mini Grand Canyon, but you'll see those little, and the little kind of valley part of it is completely black.
Before the show, I was telling Shawn that there was a video I saw one time where in California, a guy was flying. They have a actual flight pattern and video this guy on a computer where he did this flight trajectory where he made this zigzag pattern across parts of California. And he happened to have one of these energy weapons on his plane that he was using. And within 30 minutes, every grid point that he had passed started a fire, a forest fire behind him. So it was absolute proof that this was being done on purpose. So this is something that's going on in our government, in bed with major corporations, like we said, Lockheed and Raytheon.
And pharmaceutical companies.
And pharmaceutical companies, they're in bed together pushing this agenda. And this agenda is I'm sure multifaceted, but it's stealing land. It's attacking Texas. It's standing against the government in many ways on immigration. It's moving people out of wilderness areas and destroying their homes to go to 15-minute cities. So it's all a part of Agenda 21, renamed Agenda 2030. And if you don't know what that is, it was created by the Club of Rome. Go look it up. Very important that you understand that, or you're not going to understand anything that's going on today.
Yep, and you can also go to the World Economic Forum website. It is all there.
Right.
It's all there.
Absolutely. And I get in arguments with friends and family, and I'm like, all you got to do is go read and listen to what these people are saying, but they don't do that. Or they're like, yeah, that's just BS. I'm like, no. Then they tell you everything they're going to do before they do it. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to call it here. I got to get going. Shawn, thanks so much for coming on and sharing your information and talking about this very important topic and helping to get out to people. I'll include your links in the show when I can get to it tomorrow. But thanks everybody for coming out and listening to the show. Please subscribe. And if you can, tell your friends and try to expand the channel as much as you can. One thing I've been noticing, I think I'm getting a little shadow ban thing, which I'm trying not to make a big thing out of. But every time I get new subscribers, other ones suddenly disappear almost at the same rate. And I'm following a pattern of it that's been going on for a long, long time. So there's powers that be that are manipulating the situation and don't want the show expanding. But try to spread the word in the show and get more people to subscribe if you can. And check out Shawn's channel. I'll send links to that as well as his up and coming movie project that he's going to be making about these forest fires. We need to get this word out to people so that they understand what's going on, because this is undermining and destroying our country and our people. And there's so many people that are suffering from this. And it's just a satanic, demonic thing that's taken place. And people need to know that this is happening and who's behind it. This is not natural. This is man-made, and it's man-made with a purpose and an agenda. And it is killing people and is destroying property and lives. And it's unconstitutional. It's un-American. And we all need to stand up to protect and support each other and these families and these people, and here and in Lahaina and Maui, in these places that have just had their land stolen, and how unjust that is. And that goes against everything we believe as a people or a nation. And we've got to fight to stop this and fight to stop the corruption, which starts with calling out the corruption, And like Shawn said, you can't sit on the sidelines and do nothing. The Lord once told me, evil prevails when good people fail to act. That's
That's
all it
right.
takes. That's all it takes for evil to thrive. So we have a responsibility and a duty to act. And that's why I'm doing this show. That's why Shawn went down there and filmed what he filmed. We're trying to take action to get this information out. That's so important. People need to understand this. You need to understand that there are people in our government that are trying to destroy us and create a one world government.
Yep.
Simple as that. And these groups, many times, they're just satanic. I mean, straight out child sacrifice and blood drinking Satanism. It's evil. It's horrible. I just ran into a show by accident about a kid who said he was in Hollywood and accidentally stumbled into one of their Hollywood parties. And he said, what I saw celebrities doing in circles with people wearing red cloaks, he's like, I can't unsee that. And I wish to God I never saw those images in my mind, as he discussed what he saw on these elite parties. And he's like, and these are people here that are household names, but you would be blown away by the evil stuff that they do for fame and celebrity. Here's something else. Look at all the stars and athletes and celebrities in the US, and how many of those have like missing family that died suddenly, whether there's children, whether it's parents, whether it's loved ones, whether it's best friends. These are all sacrifices that they make in order to gain higher celebrity status, and every one of them's got it. They all have it. I
Yep.
don't want to call out a bunch of names, but you can look them up and research them for yourself. But anyway, I'm going to call the show. And Shawn, is there anything you want to say before we take off?
Yep. So our target date for this documentary is June 20th. I'm going to give when we know for sure, I will get information to you, John, and you can share it with your subscribers. And I just ask that the subscribers, when you get a chance, please purchase a ticket. Tell your friends, tell your family about it. Watch it on your big screen TV. Make people aware of it, because the more people are aware about it, then we could then focus on a plan on how to prevent this from happening again.
Sounds good. Shawn, again, thanks for coming on. Everybody, y'all have a good night. Keep the lights on. God bless. Remember, Jesus is the answer and the solution to everything that we are facing today. Draw close to him while there is still time.